On March 15, 2025, President Donald Trump launched a massive air and naval assault on Yemen's Houthi rebels. The strikes targeted radars, air defenses, and missile and drone systems, with the stated goal of restoring security in the Red Sea after months of Houthi attacks on merchant and military ships. Shortly after the attacks, Trump doubled down on his rhetoric, posting on Truth Social that Iran was directly responsible for the Houthis' actions. He made it clear that any future attack by the Houthis would be treated as an attack by Iran itself, a dangerous red line that could lead to full-scale war with one of the most powerful nations in the region. This reckless decision ignores the lessons of past U.S. interventions. The American people are tired of endless wars, tired of fighting conflicts that have nothing to do with the U.S., and yet here we are again, bombing another country with no real strategy, no clear objective, and no idea how this ends. And by the way, today I'm dealing with a cold, so my voice may sound a bit strange today, but thank you guys anyways. Just letting you guys know. When Donald Trump first ran for president, he made one thing very clear, that he was not like other politicians in Washington. He promised to put America first, to end the endless wars, and to bring our troops back home. He campaigned on being the president of peace, the leader who would focus on fixing America instead of wasting our money on foreign conflicts.
Your policies, I see, secure the borders, bring jobs back. I look at the Democrats and many Republicans, and it's foreign war and foreign expansion.
That's right.
What is that?
I think it's just a failed mentality. It's crazy. You can solve problems over a telephone. Instead, they start dropping bombs. I see recently they're dropping bombs all over Yemen. You don't have to do that. You can talk in such a way where they respect you and they listen to you. Viktor Orban of Hungary, you know, the leader, they call him a strong man. Who cares if he's a strong man or not a strong man? He's a very powerful guy. He said the problem the world has is that Donald Trump is no longer president. When he was president, China didn't play around, Russia didn't play around, nobody played around, and we had no problems. Today, the whole world is on fire.
But the Trump we're seeing now is a very different Trump.
And as President Trump has made it clear, Hamas, the Houthis, Iran, all those who seek to terrorize not just Israel, but also the United States of America, will see a price to pay. All hell will break loose. And all of the terrorists in the Middle East, again, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iranian-backed terror proxies, and Iran themselves should take President Trump very seriously when he says he is not afraid to stand for law-abiding people. He is not afraid to stand up for the United States of America and our friend and our ally Israel. And we know that these successful defensive strikes that took place over the weekend against the Houthis in the Red Sea were indeed successful. We took out some of their leaders, and the Defense Department is set to continue with this campaign if the Houthis continue with their retaliatory measures.
The man who once criticized reckless U.S. military interventions has now launched his own massive strikes in the Middle East, pulling the U.S. back into another conflict that could completely spiral out of control. But what if I told you that this is not surprising at all, and actually many predicted Trump would absolutely move us closer to a war with Iran? If you paid close attention to Trump's rhetoric during the campaign trail, or his cabinet appointments, and especially who funded his campaign, you would know that this was bound to happen. Because when it comes to Trump's 2024 campaign and his policies in 2025, a handful of ultra-wealthy donors and lobbyists played a massive role in making sure their interests come first. One of the biggest influences on Trump's presidency has been the pro-Israel lobby, a powerful network of donors, think tanks, and political groups that have ensured America's foreign policy always aligns with Israel's interests. And at the center of this is Trump's mega donors like Miriam Adelson and Paul Singer, who pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into his campaign to make sure his policies reflected their priorities. If you want to understand why Trump has been so pro-Israel, you have to just look at who funds him. And no one has given more money to Trump than Miriam Adelson. Miriam is the widow of Sheldon Adelson, the late casino billionaire who was one of the biggest donors in Republican history. After his death, Miriam took over the role as the GOP's top financier, and in 2024, she poured over $100 million into Trump's campaign. But what does she want? Well, it's actually quite simple. She just wants the U.S. government to prioritize Israel's interests above everything else. For years, the Adelsons have pushed for U.S. recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank. They supported moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and advocated for more aggressive actions towards Iran. All things that Trump has delivered on his first presidency and is currently delivering now. But what does this all have to do with the Houthis in Yemen? Well, for months, Israel has been waging a brutal war in Gaza, killing thousands of innocent Palestinians, bombing homes, hospital, and refugee camps. This is not some defensive operation. This is straight up, outright slaughter of people who have nowhere to run, no way to escape, and no protection from Israel's relentless airstrikes. And while this was happening, the world was watching, and some groups actually decided to take action. One of those groups was the Houthis in Yemen. The Houthis are an armed group that control most of northern Yemen, and they decided they were not going to just sit back and watch as Israel wiped out thousands of Palestinians, especially with the full backing of the United States. So what did they decide to do? They started blocking and attacking ships in the Red Sea, targeted vessels that were either owned by Israel, linked to Israeli interests, or connected to countries that were openly supporting Israel's bombing campaign, like the U.S. This was their way of putting economic pressure on Israel and its allies for what they were doing in the Gaza Strip. And here's the part that Washington doesn't want to talk about. It's that the Houthis actually stopped attacking ships in the Red Sea when Israel stopped bombing Gaza. When there was international pressure to force Israel into a ceasefire and to stop attacking Gaza, the Houthis also stopped attacking ships. They paused their operations in the Red Sea. They didn't attack just for the sake of attacking. They just wanted to stop Israel from murdering Palestinians. But when Israel resumed its brutal bombing, the Houthis started attacking Israeli and American ships once again. So this isn't about terrorism or Iranian aggression like the media keeps telling us. This is just about resistance against genocide. The Houthis made their demands very clear. Stop the war on Gaza and we will stop disrupting trade. But instead of dealing with the root cause, like Israel's crimes in Gaza, the U.S. decided to just start bombing the Houthis instead. And Trump, despite calling himself America First, is doing all of this on behalf of Israel and Netanyahu, and especially ramping up aggression against Iran, because the ultimate goal of these people who have been manipulating our government is to push the U.S. into a war with Iran. For decades, Israel and its allies in Washington have been pushing for a war with Iran. They've used every excuse in the book. Iran's nuclear programs, its support for militias, its threat to Israel, all of this to justify U.S. launches, U.S. airstrikes, U.S. sanctions, or even to invade Iran. But this has nothing to do with protecting America. This is about Israel's long-term strategy to eliminate all regional rivals and remain the uncontested power in the Middle East. Iran isn't a threat to America. Iran is a threat to Israel's ability to dominate the region, and that's why the pro-Israel lobby has spent decades trying to get the U.S. to take it out. If you look at the Middle East over the past 20 years, you'll notice a very clear pattern. Every country that once challenged Israel's power has been either weakened or completely destroyed. For example, Iraq, gone. The U.S. invasion toppled Saddam Hussein, and the country has been in chaos ever since. Another example is Libya, completely destroyed. NATO bombed Gaddafi, out of power, and now Libya is a failed state. And most recently, Syria. Just in December, Western-backed rebels overthrew Bashar al-Assad, and these rebels are literally terrorists. They're an off-branch of al-Qaeda running Syria, all backed by the West, and because Syria was a threat to Israel. All of these countries once stood in the way of Israel's dominance, and now they're either too weak or too broken to challenge Israel's power. And that leaves only one major regional power, and that's Iran. Iran is the last real rival to Israel's military and economic dominance in the Middle East, and it's the only country in the region with the resources, the military capability, and the alliances to push back against Israel's expansionist goals. And that's why Israel and its lobbyists are so desperate to destroy Iran, just like they destroyed Iraq, Syria, and Libya. But Israel doesn't want to fight this war alone. They want us to do it for them. They want America to do it for them. For years, Israeli politicians like Netanyahu have been calling for the U.S. to launch airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Netanyahu has been repeating the same fear-mongering script since the 1990s, claiming that Iran is just a few months away, always just a few months away from having a nuclear bomb. It's always just a few months away, and yet decades have passed, and Iran still doesn't have a nuclear weapon. The push for war with Iran isn't just reckless, it's absolutely suicidal for America. For years, the pro-Israel lobby and Washington's neocons have been beating the war drums, trying to drag the U.S. into another unnecessary conflict in the Middle East. If America goes to war with Iran, we will pay the price. Not Israel, not the billionaire war hawks funding our politicians, but the ordinary Americans, the ordinary soldiers, and our economy. One of the first and most immediate consequences of a war with Iran would be an economic catastrophe. Iran isn't some isolated country with a weak economy like Iraq or Libya. It is one of the world's largest oil producers. It controls the Strait of Hormuz, a critical waterway where 30% of the world's oil shipments pass through every single day. If a war breaks out, Iran will block this route, and that means global oil prices will skyrocket overnight. And just think about it, Americans are already feeling the pain of high prices, job insecurity, and a broken financial system. Now, imagine throwing a global oil crisis into the mix. It would just devastate the economy, it would devastate working class Americans, while the wealthy elites who push for war would live comfortably, untouched by the chaos they created. So Trump's decision to launch airstrikes against the Houthis in Yemen is shaping up to be one of the biggest mistakes of his presidency. This isn't just another military operation. It's a direct contradiction to the very promises that got him elected. Up until this point, Trump actually had a pretty strong record. Of course, obviously, excluding the whole Gaza plan, but he wasn't just another Republican pushing for tax cuts. He was someone who was trying to reshape global politics and dismantle this U.S. hegemony neocon system. For example, from getting rid of U.S. aid, which was just a complete globalist project to spread liberal degeneracy around the world and to entangle the U.S. in foreign conflicts and countries, and to the way he's handling the war in Ukraine. Because unlike Biden, who kept supporting this radical fascist country in Ukraine and fueling the war with endless military aid, at least Trump is actually pushing for peace. He understands that America has nothing to gain from this proxy war with Russia, and the best move was to broker a peace deal that would end the conflict and shift the world towards a more balanced multipolar order. For a while, it looked like Trump was trying to stay true to his campaign promises of ending wars, of dismantling this globalist project. But unfortunately, the military-industrial complex and especially the pro-Israel lobby has too much power in our country. And once a president starts a war, that war defines their presidency. No one remembers George W. Bush for tax cuts. They remember him for the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Nobody remembers Obama for the economy. They remember him for Syria and Libya. Trump is risking going down that same path if he continues. If he lets this escalate, he won't be remembered as the guy who ended the war in Ukraine or boosted crypto or the economy. He'll just be remembered as another president who got us stuck into another endless war in the Middle East. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think. Are we headed towards a war with Iran, or are people like me just overreacting? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. And if you like this video, I'm sure you're going to like this one here and this one here. I'll see you in the next one.